Hey there guys and goddesses, welcome back to my channel TheTarative and thank you for stopping by. So if you have seen my unexpected news video, you will know that I'm pregnant with baby number 2, and as the title of this video does suggest, it is going to be a first trimester update that I'll be doing today. So, I will be discussing everything that's happened within the first 13 weeks of pregnancy, so that will include discussing pregnancy symptoms that I've experienced, as well as the body changes that have occurred over the last 13 weeks, and then I will also discuss all the appointments that I've had so far in the first trimester, so that will include midwife appointments, blood tests, and of course the ultrasound scan. And if you do stay tuned right to the end of the video, I will of course be sharing with you the pictures that I've got from the first ultrasound scan, so they're very, very cute, so it's definitely worth staying tuned for that. So without further ado, let's just hop straight into the video. Now the first thing I'm going to be discussing are the pregnancy symptoms that I've experienced so far throughout this pregnancy. So the first one that I noticed, and actually this was the one that led me to believing I could be pregnant and actually taking the test to find out I was indeed pregnant, and that was nausea. So over the course of one weekend, I started feeling extremely nauseous, which is very unlike myself. I don't tend to feel sick, and I don't tend to get sick, touch wood, very often. But yes, I started feeling nauseous, and that led me to thinking, oh my goodness, the only time I've really been nauseous is when I was pregnant, and so therefore I took the pregnancy test, and indeed I was in fact pregnant. Now since that point I have experienced nausea every day, and actually about half a week to a week after that point I started throwing up daily. Unfortunately it has continued up until where I am right now, and I'm sure it's going to continue quite far into the second trimester. Now with Allura I didn't stop throwing up until I was about 22 weeks pregnant. Now it wasn't really morning sickness, it's more like all day sickness, and I do find that as the day goes on I generally feel worse and worse, and it's usually more so in the afternoon or the evening that I tend to throw up. That was the case with Allura, and so far that's been the case with this pregnancy, so I have a feeling that unfortunately the sickness and the nausea is going to continue quite far into the second trimester. Fingers crossed it ends a little bit sooner than the 22-week mark, but we'll just have to wait and see. The second pregnancy symptom that I've experienced, and actually looking back in hindsight, this was clearly the first time that I was pregnant, but at that point it hadn't even entered my mind that that was a possibility at the time. But for about 4 to 5 weeks before I found out I was pregnant, I was experiencing quite a lot of fatigue, and I still am. It is easing off a little bit now, but definitely for those first 4 to 5 weeks before I found out, I was getting extremely tired, especially by the end of the day, and when I woke up in the morning I didn't feel nice and refreshed, even though I felt I got a decent amount of sleep. So unfortunately that is one typical pregnancy symptom that people experience, especially within the first trimester, and that is something that I've been experiencing so far. As I mentioned, in the last week I think it started to ease off, so hopefully continuing into the second trimester it will just disappear and I'll feel a little bit more lively and a little bit more like myself. So this is where my pregnancy symptoms start merging into body changes. I feel that this particular pregnancy symptom is very half pregnancy symptom and then also half body change, and that is bloating. So with Allura, I didn't really experience much bloating, at least that I can remember within the first trimester. However, I did find I was extremely gassy with Allura, and by that I mean I was burping pretty much constantly, which is not particularly nice. Obviously I did try to do it nice and subtly, but yes, I was definitely experiencing a lot of excess gas with Allura, but it was coming out in the form of a burp. Now this time I haven't really been burping whatsoever. I may be 1 or 2 here or there, but probably no more than I would typically when I'm not pregnant. But I have noticed that my stomach, especially by the end of the day, looks pretty bloated, and it's only by the morning that it starts shrinking back down, and I do believe that that is due to the fact that because I'm not letting out that excess gas, it's just making my stomach bloat instead. So that's the first body change that I've really noticed to do with pregnancy symptoms, and that is bloating. So one of the body changes that I experienced with Allura, but I haven't experienced so far with this pregnancy, are breasts enlarging. Now with Allura, it was probably within the first couple of weeks of finding out I was pregnant that my boobs grew a cup size or 2, and then they were pretty large throughout the whole pregnancy, at least large for myself, and I was definitely not complaining. A free boob job effect for pregnancy is definitely one of the perks, at least in my book, so I wasn't complaining about that. But this time I haven't experienced that whatsoever. Now I think that's because I'm still breastfeeding Allura every now and again, and so my boobs are going up and down with milk supply rather than actually pregnancy hormones. Now I do plan to start weaning Allura off breastfeeding, so we'll see if that makes a difference or not in the next coming weeks. I think it probably will. I don't know if it'll take a little while to start taking effect, but I'm hoping that towards the end of the pregnancy that my boobs are a little bit larger, because as I said, that's definitely one of the body changes that I'm not complaining about whatsoever. Definitely a pregnancy perk in my book. Now, the last thing that I've experienced, and I can't really remember if I experienced this with Alora's pregnancy, but I do find that my chest right here has got quite a few spots on. Now, I don't think it is anything other than pregnancy related, because I do exfoliate that area and I don't really get spots there normally. If I do, they go away with exfoliating. However, this time exfoliating hasn't really made that much difference. They're almost like little whiteheads, but not really. Almost like when you get an ingrown hair maybe on your leg and you get those little like bobbly dots. It feels like those, but as I said, they're a little bit red. You can't really see in this top, and they have been going down in the last week or so, but for the last month or two, they definitely have been there, and they've just been across my chest area. I haven't really experienced the spots anywhere else, but that's definitely the last pregnancy symptom / body change that I've experienced so far in this pregnancy. Now I'm going to be moving on and discussing all the appointments I've had so far within the first 13 weeks of pregnancy. Now, there's actually only been 3 so far, which I think is quite typical. So, the first one that I had was a booking appointment with the midwife, and then I had a 9 weeks blood test, and then I did have an ultrasound scan around the 12-week mark, or the dating scan. I didn't actually know how far along I was, so I thought I was between about 11 and 12 weeks pregnant at that time. So they have actually dated my pregnancy, and I now have a due date, but I will be discussing that after I've discussed the previous appointments. So as I just mentioned, the first appointment that I had was a midwife appointment, and that was the booking appointment. Basically, they just ask you lots and lots of questions about your medical history, your partner's medical history, lifestyle, and just general health questions, just to get a really good understanding of how you are right now with regards to your health, and if you need any extra support to have as much a healthy pregnancy as possible going forward. So they had pretty much everything on file from last time when I was pregnant with Alora, but it still took a little while because they just have to make sure that nothing changes, but everything pretty much the same, so nothing to worry about, no extra support needed in that area. Now, a really common part of the booking appointment is also to take your blood pressure and to take your height and your weight to find out if you're within a healthy range for your BMI. So they did take my blood pressure, everything was okay. I don't know the numbers, I can't remember, but basically my blood pressure was absolutely within the normal range, so nothing to be worried about there. Now, they did take my height and my weight. This time I think I weighed just over 11 stone. Now, when I was pregnant with Alora, the first weighing that I had was about 10 stone, I think, or just over 10 stone. However, it had been my wedding very shortly before I got pregnant with Alora, or around the time that I got pregnant with Alora, so that obviously meant I was a little bit trimmer at that point compared to now. I wasn't purposely dieting, but I was definitely watching my weight, watching what I was eating a little bit, just so I looked quite nice and trim on my wedding day. So yes, this time I'm about a stone heavier going into the pregnancy. However, I'm still within the normal range for my height, so my BMI came back pretty average, so nothing to worry about there. Now, there's one thing that was slightly different with this particular booking appointment compared to the booking appointment I had with Alora. So for those of you who haven't seen my birth story video with Alora, you won't know, but after I gave birth to her, I did experience a postpartum hemorrhage. And for those of you who don't know what that means, basically it's just a bleed after you've given birth. Now, the reason for my PPH was because my uterus stopped contracting. So your uterus is meant to continue contracting even after you've given birth, and that's to slow down the blood loss and also to help your uterus shrink back or start shrinking back to its original size pre-pregnancy. So mine stopped pretty much straight after I pushed her out, and so therefore I experienced a lot more blood loss than you would normally want to see. Now, you would normally want to see anything up to about 500 millilitres, and this time I experienced a blood loss of 1.2 litre blood loss, so quite a bit more. It's more than double, and so I was a little bit concerned because I'd experienced that with Alora. Is it more prevalent the second time around if you've experienced it, or are your chances just as the same as anyone else who's either first time pregnant or hasn't experienced a bleed before? So this is something I did discuss with the midwife in this booking appointment. She did actually bring it up before I had a chance, but basically she said because the reason for my PPH was due to a lazy uterus, it meant that this time around there is a good chance that it could happen again, and she led me to believe that it's probably more likely to happen this time because it had happened with the first pregnancy or the first birth. So it's not the most ideal situation because it means that it is more likely to happen, or at least she led me to believe it's more likely to happen this time around. And it was quite scary, to be honest, when it happened last time. I tried to remain calm. I'd just given birth. I was a little bit fragile, and my husband was sitting with Alora. They'd passed her over to her because they pressed the emergency button. Loads of people came in to try and help me with the blood loss situation. Now, I do have to say that actually everything did turn out obviously okay in the end, and it was quite quick turnaround, but they had to manually start helping my uterus contract again. After that, it was pretty much okay. I did have to spend an extra night in hospital, so I'm a little bit more concerned leading up until the birth. Obviously, it's quite far away right now, but time creeps along sooner than you realise, so that's one thing that I'm not particularly looking forward to. It has got me a little bit concerned. But what they have done is they have referred me to a consultant. I did get the appointment through the other day, and I believe it's somewhere between the 16-week midwife appointment and the 20-week ultrasound scan. So that will be in the second trimester update video. I'll talk through everything that's come out of that. But basically, they've referred me to a consultant so I can talk through my birthing options, as it might be slightly different to when I had Elora. So that pretty much sums up everything that happened in the booking appointment. We did then also book my 9-week blood test, which I think was only a week after that appointment. I wasn't sure how far along I was at that particular point, and so it lined up to me thinking that I was about 9 weeks the week after the booking appointment. And then also she did send off to book me in for a 12-week ultrasound scan. So with the blood test, pretty routine at 9 weeks. They take about, I think it was about 5 or 6 vials of the blood. Again, it was very, very smooth. The nurse is always really great whenever I've had to do blood tests or have blood taken. And so it was a pretty simple process. I think I was in and out within a few minutes. I felt absolutely fine afterwards, and the blood results have come back absolutely normal. Now, I can't remember 100% what they do test for, but I think they do a full blood count just to make sure everything's okay, make sure you're not anemic. So I'm not anemic, and then they also test a few things. I think they do a few STIs, so like HIV and stuff like that. So I was pleased to hear that nothing had changed in that respect. No STIs, so completely healthy, which is good. So the latest appointment that I had and the last appointment that I've had within the first 13 weeks of being pregnant is the ultrasound scan. So they call this the dating scan. Basically, they'll measure the baby to see how far along you are in pregnancy. So I now do have a due date, and it turns out at the point of that scan, I was 13 weeks and 1 day, which is a couple of weeks further along than I thought. I thought I was only about 11 weeks pregnant. I thought somewhere between 11 and 12, but I had a sneaky suspicion it was on the earlier side. So finding out I was 13 weeks and 1 day was definitely not a bad thing whatsoever. I'd rather be slightly further along, because pregnancy is quite a long and slow journey at times. So being a couple of weeks further along than expected is not a bad thing whatsoever. So first of all, they did have a little look just to make sure that the baby looked okay. They could see that the baby had a heartbeat and that it was about 13 weeks and 1 day gestational age. And of course, there was only the one baby in there. So again, I was a little bit relieved, because as soon as you start having multiples, it becomes a high risk pregnancy. But yes, I was quite pleased to find out there's just the one in there, and that the baby looks healthy so far. So they do lots of different measurements. They have looks at different parts of their vital organs. They have a little look at the brain, they have a little look at the heart, they have a little look at the stomach. I can't remember if they can see much else with regards to the vital organs at that point. I think it's the 20-week scan. Obviously they look in things a lot more detail, but in this first scan they can see certain organs, and they will look at those. So the brain looked okay, the heart, from what they could see, was pumping away nicely, and actually I think they look at the liver as well. Did I just say liver? No, I think I said stomach. I think they look at the liver and stomach. I can't quite remember, but everything they saw seemed okay. They do also do a measurement of the fluid behind the baby's neck. Now this particular baby was being very awkward, and it took quite a while to get a good idea or a good picture of the fluid behind the neck. I basically had to jiggle around quite a bit to move the baby into a better position. Now the reason why they do that is because if your baby has fluid over or under a particular range of numbers, I can't quite remember what they are, it means that your baby is more likely to have a syndrome such as Down syndrome, Edwards or Patau's. And this particular ultrasound scan, I did also have blood tests afterwards. Basically it's called a combined screening. So they take your blood results along with what they've seen in the ultrasound scan, and they'll give you the chances of this baby having one of those syndromes. I haven't got the results from that yet. I think it usually takes a week or two for them to post it to you. But yeah, so I did the combined screening, but from the ultrasound scan everything looked okay. So that is absolutely great news. And I do have the pictures right in front of me. I might have to take some pictures and insert them, because sometimes it's a little bit hard to show them without showing all my details, but they're super duper cute. There they are. So as you can see, very clear image, the baby's head, baby's brain, a little foot there, which I think is really sweet, the fact you can see that. And I think that's a hand. I don't think it's another foot, I think it's a hand. And then it's nice rounded tummy so far. So super duper sweet. Now, I'm not going to show all of them on here. As I said, I'll probably just insert them in just a second or before the end of the video, just because it's a little bit hard to go through all of them without showing your details. They put your details on the top. So as you can see, Alora has now just joined me. She just got back from a lovely play in the play park with Daddy, but she's a little bit upset and she wants me. So she's just going to sit on my lap whilst I finish this video. So one thing I forgot to mention was that this particular scan was a little bit different to when I had the scan with Alora, because this time, unfortunately, Dan, my husband, wasn't able to come. Since we are in the middle of a global pandemic, they don't want any visitors more so than needed to the hospitals, and so therefore he wasn't able to come to this particular ultrasound scan. I don't know if he'll be able to come to the next one or not. We'll just have to wait and see nearer the time. So it was a bit of a shame. I did feel quite bad for him because he wasn't able to be there in person and see the baby kicking around and moving around on the screen, which is always really nice to see. But hopefully next time he'll be able to come, and of course we have the pictures, and so he's got those to look at as well. So now that brings me to the end of the video. I've now covered everything that's occurred within the first 13 weeks of pregnancy. So I do hope you enjoyed this video. Please leave it a massive thumbs up if you did. I will be doing more pregnancy updates throughout the rest of the pregnancy going forward, so do stay tuned for those. If you have any questions, then please ask away in the comments below and I'll be sure to answer them. And hopefully I shall see you very, very soon. As you can see, Alora is raring to get off the camera and off my lap. I think she wants something to eat. So we shall see you in the next video, hopefully. Bye for now.